Hello, everyone. My name is Jean-François Marcoux. I am a coach, teacher, and facilitator at the Robert Osset Institute of the Profession of Arms. And here we are presenting the EQI 2.0 emotional intelligence model and the process that you are participating in terms of completing this assessment. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you received an invitation to partake in an EQI 2.0 assessment. And then in that invitation, there was a link to this particular video. The idea here is to present you with the process that you're embarking upon. So how will this unfold for you? Provide you with the winning conditions to get the most out of this particular assessment, and provide you again with a bit of an overview of what EQI 2.0 and emotional intelligence is. And at the tail end of this presentation, a little bit of a linkage between EQI 2.0 and leadership competencies, as this is a leadership-centric activity. So a couple of administrative points before diving into our short presentation. First, if you are involved with this process, you are dealing with a certified EQI 2.0 administrator and facilitator, as well as somebody that is qualified to administer the test and interpret the results. It would be either myself, a colleague of mine at the Osset Institute named Maxime Rodeau, or somebody else within your lines that is certified in EQI 2.0 process. Why is that important? It provides you with the assurance that whomever is administering this test is qualified to do so. And only certified administrators of the EQI 2.0 are able and authorized to administer this test in any way, shape, or form. So that should provide you with the first foundational piece of you can walk into this in full confidence. Another point is that this entire process is fully confidential. That means that your participation in this assessment will be completely confidential. Your results will be shared with no one except yourself and perhaps one of the EQI 2.0 administrators, as that person will administer the test, send out the invitation, and send out your report. These are the only people that have access to your results, yourself and the EQI administrator, such as myself. These will not be shared anywhere else. This is very important to establish confidence and comfort with you, and that allows you to answer this test honestly. So that's the part of the business that is about confidentiality and what you're embarking upon. Now I'm going to share my screen to show you a presentation that I've prepared to show you what is the EQI all about, what is the process all about. So we have the presentation up in front of us right now. So let us focus on the key aspects of the model. First, emotional intelligence. Well, it's a term you may have heard within the CAF as it is being discussed, more and more in terms of a tool and a concept that supports many areas of leader development within the organization. So, emotional intelligence, as is shown on screen, is how you understand and manage your own emotions and those of the people around you. People with emotional intelligence know what they're feeling, what their emotions are, and also how these emotions can affect other people around them. This could be quite important in your general day-to-day life, but also for leaders, it can be a really, really interesting self-awareness piece on how emotions affect you as a leader with your subordinates, your peer group, and even your supervisor. So as a leader, having emotional intelligence is essential for success, as it allows you to succeed by communicating your emotions more effectively, managing more effectively, and remaining in control, and providing constructive feedback and direction to your subordinates, advice to your peer group or to your supervisor with a more in-depth awareness of how you're feeling and why, and how does that affect you in terms of your decision-making, interpersonal relations, how you express yourself, and we'll get into that later. So, but just as a quick example, a leader who shouts all the time and his team when he or she is under stress, or a leader that stays in control and calmly addresses the situation. It already kind of shows you which of these two types of leaders could be more effective in terms of effective leadership outcomes, as that is the name of the game within Canadian Armed Forces. So that's really a quick overview of emotional intelligence as a concept. Now, let's talk about how this all unfolds in terms of the process. I've mentioned the confidentiality. It's also a voluntary process. For you to get the most out of this assessment, you need to walk into it voluntarily, meaning you want to do this assessment. You will be encouraged to do so because we believe at the OSID and in your particular school that this is a valuable tool for leader development. So you walk into this voluntarily, as it is a self-disclosure, self-awareness test. So first, how does this work? You will get an assessment invitation by email. You probably already have this invitation since you're watching this video. So that email will provide you with a bunch of information, as you've noticed, on what the EQI is all about. This is in written form. It may be something that you prefer to do, reading instead of watching this video, or these are complementary ways to explain the process. So that invitation will contain a link to this video, a link to the broader YouTube channel we offer that supports EQI, but that comes after the assessment. And right in between, there'll be a link to take the assessment online. If you click on the link, you start the process of completing this assessment online. It takes 20 to 30 minutes to complete this particular assessment, and it will generate an individual confidential report that will be sent back to you 24 to 48 hours before your training event. That should allow you enough time to browse through your report, get a general idea of what it means to you in terms of your EQI or emotional intelligence, those competencies, and what the scores mean. And then you walk into the training event with a baseline understanding of what EQI means to you and in general. And then the training event will likely take the form of a group debrief that will seek to demystify the model, explain to you how you can use it, perhaps create an action plan, but also how to better understand your own report. This is what happens when you participate in that EQI 2.0 training event that again will be delivered by a certified EQI 2.0 person that has the ability and the qualifications to administer the test and interpret it for you in that particular training event. And then, as a reminder, the process is completely confidential from start to finish. Now, the assessment. How do you get the most out of this EQI 2.0 assessment? Now, think of yourself neutrally. Take that 40,000 feet perspective, as we like to call it. So don't over-focus on yourself at home, in your workspace, in your leisure time. Try to think of yourself as neutrally as possible with that high-end perspective. So who am I neutrally? This is something you can use as a mental preparation to take the test with the optimal conditions. So once you've established that I'm neutral, I'm thinking of myself at 40,000 feet, set aside a time that's 20 to 30 minutes of quiet time so that you can complete this test. And again, with the optimal conditions that you're focused on the test itself, and you're not going to have any disturbances or distractions during that 20 to 30 minute time. Once you start the questionnaire, do not dwell or over dwell on one question over another. Answer these questions as they come to you. Rely on your intuition, and that's how the assessment is built. So these will be forced choice questions. So you need to choose one or the other, and that will allow the tool and the algorithm to assess your emotional intelligence as accurately as possible. This is a self-awareness assessment. It relies on your honesty. So answering these questions honestly, hence don't overdwell on them, to create a snapshot, an accurate snapshot of your emotional intelligence score. And that will be presented in your report. Now, the report contains a bunch of information. It has scales and subscales, or competencies and subcompetencies, that are all scored against a norm. That norm group will be explained to you during your training event, as that will be demystified so that you can make even more sense of those scores. Now, here's the EQI 2.0 model that I've been talking about for the past few minutes in a nutshell. It is built as a building block approach. As you can see on screen, there are arrows that show each part of the model feeding into the other one and then feeding back at the start. Very quickly, the model relies on 5 composites: self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management, and all the way back to self-perception. And under each of these composites, you will have subscales or competencies. So for example, self-perception, which is about how good are you at taking your internal temperature? How do you perceive yourself? Are you accurate in how you perceive yourself emotionally? Well, it is supported by 3 subscales or 3 competencies: self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. That is one of the foundational pieces of your EQ house. Then you have self-expression, which is about how do you broadcast these emotions? How do you express them? That too is supported by 3 subscales or competencies: emotional expression, assertiveness, and independence. And right away, I could tell you, these subscales or competencies are all interlinked. They all interact with one another within the model. And the key to this particular model is balance. This will be explained in your training event, but it's good to put this into your mindset when you answer the questions. We then move into the interpersonal realm. At the bottom, it is supported by interpersonal relationships, empathy, and social responsibility, which brings us to decision-making, supported by problem-solving, reality testing, impulse control. And then last but not least, we move into stress management, and the entire model feeds into that. It generates stress. That stress management is supported by flexibility, stress tolerance, and optimism, and then feeds right back into self-perception. The idea here is that each of these big composites, self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal decision-making, and stress management, all work together in tandem. They all support one another to create a balanced approach to emotional management as a person and as a leader. And this generates at the center, at the core of the model, your emotional intelligence general score. So this is pretty much the model in a nutshell to give you an idea. We don't want to dive into this too much before you take the test, as that might skew the results, but now you should have a bit more of a comfort level situational awareness piece on what this particular model is all about. We'll conclude this presentation by mentioning the competency-based model. This is really a quick way of saying the EQI 2.0 is based on competencies. Like I just showed you, you have self-perception, under which you have self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. Well, these are EQ competencies. There are 15 EQ competencies in the model that lead to making better decisions, communicating with greater clarity, increasing your capability or capacity to cope with stress, and building stronger, more connected relationships. Now, these are generic EQ competencies, and right below we have two pictures. On one side, we have the EQI leadership competencies, which are part of one of those reports that's called the leadership report, which is likely what you'll get in this training event. Now, these EQ competencies are presented in these large transformational leadership competencies, and they link up to the other table that's on the other side. These are the Canadian Armed Forces meta competencies and competencies. These are part of the PACE system. These are part of all the QS and TPs of all the major programs in the CAF as it's moving to a competency-based approach as opposed to a task-based approach, while the EQI supports these leadership competencies directly. Let's take social capacities at the left side of the model or right side of the model, depending on what side this is showing on your screen. And below are competencies. These would be communication, teamwork, interpersonal relations, and partnering. Well, we've discussed the EQI model, so here's the good example of how the EQI can support communication. Now, communication is about what you broadcast, how you listen, how you read others, and it breaks down into written communication, oral communication, and so on and so forth. So as a leader, this is a critical competency to manage and lead your followers, to ensure their well-being and commitment, for example, to ensure internal integration and cohesion. So how does EQI support this? Let's take a quick example. If you have good self-perception, so you know your emotions well, you know your confidence level well, and you know how connected you are to your work environment, and your emotional expression is also good, meaning you know how to express your emotions constructively and clearly, you know how to be assertive in a constructive manner, and you're independent in your decision making without leaving the team behind. Well, that would enhance the way you will communicate your objectives to your team, for example. That will enhance how you build teamwork, how you identify perhaps pitfalls or friction points within your teams. As a leader, this could be quite beneficial to enhancing that leadership toolbox. And that is really the name of the game. The EQI 2.0 is a tool that can enhance your leadership competencies and add tools to that very valuable leadership toolbox, perhaps tools you haven't considered yet. These tools could be linked to those soft skills that are so valuable within the CAF. They can support group dynamics, conflict resolution. So if you give it a chance, this tool can certainly support most of the competencies in the table you have before you. So this is what we wanted to do in terms of what this model is all about. We've covered what is the EQ, what is the process, and how does it link up to leadership competencies. That is pretty much the idea behind this video, to give you a general sense of what the EQI 2.0 is all about. So in conclusion, key reminder, this is completely confidential, this is voluntary, and it can certainly add to your leader's toolbox if you allow it. Once you've completed the assessment, you will get your report 24 to 48 hours prior to your training event, and that training event will be delivered by an EQI 2.0 certified administrator, so you can be ensured that the process is delivered by somebody that is qualified to interpret the results and help you move forward and develop perhaps an action plan on how you can leverage EQI competencies to enhance your leadership skills and move forward, perhaps with more confidence. So hopefully this demystified the process and allows you to move forward with confidence. If you're ready, you can click on that link and start that EQI test. That shouldn't take you more than 20 to 30 minutes to complete. And then you will participate in that training event with a more informed perspective on what EQI 2.0 is all about. Thank you for your time.